Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Rasheed Newson again. This time we're going to chat about There's Only One Sin in Hollywood. Welcome, Rasheed. Oh, I love that book cover.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
They did another great book cover job for you.
I certainly send over a mood board that leaves little to, I'm like, this is what I'd like.
Good. Look,
I wanted it to look like one of those posters from the 1950s when the text would almost scream at you that this is what the movie is.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Will you give the audience an overview of what this book is about?
Sure. This book tracks the rise and fall of a Black closeted gay movie star in the 1950s and 1960s. He's a rival to Sidney Poitier. Diane Carroll is his bestie. And he lives in what was then known as the glass closet, which is that everybody in Hollywood understood he was gay, but no one was going to out him publicly. And I wanted to tell a story about someone who at first is good with that arrangement, but then starts to get the idea that they want to speak their truth and they want to speak to the politics of their time. And that is the danger that sort of begins to emerge in this book.
Well, having grown up sort of, so to speak, with Rock Hudson as a movie star, and then when he developed AIDS and then came out as being gay, and it shocked the world. I think we look back on it now and it's like, okay, whatever, but it shocked the world.
Well, it shocked the world outside of Hollywood. Everyone, just about everybody in Hollywood knew that he was. I do in my research, I look into a lot of bathhouses and gay bars of the past, and so many of them brag that Rock Hudson was there. That man got around, and he was a huge star. Like, that's another thing. Like, you have to really, he was George Clooney. He was sex symbol, leading man, and he was a practicing homosexual, and yet most of the public had no idea. And they fell out of their chair, one, at the diagnosis, but just two, that man, that tall, strapping man, could be gay.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, that's odd, But then I look at this and I think you sort of threw a bit of a monkey wrench into this because your characters are Black.
Yes.
And I really don't think that I'd ever thought of that from a Black perspective. So what about that was something that drew you to telling this story?
Well, I as a writer, what I'm sort of interested in is looking at a different city, a different industry, a different time period, and saying, okay, what were the queer people of color here? What were the Black queer people doing during this stage? And of course, there have always been, Black gay people, Black queer people in Hollywood. Now, I think the systems of oppression were such that many of them did not get very far, if they didn't just absolutely sort of keep that part of themselves locked down. And I wanted to sort of figure out realistically, how far could someone go? And what would they need in order to really reach the upper echelons as a movie star if they were Black and gay? And so that's how Xavier C. Barlow came into being.
And I loved that because it really gave me some pause to think about, as a queer person, and you're a queer person of color. So God forgive me for saying this, but you almost have two strikes against you in this world.
Well, yeah. You have to think about, you belong to two oppressed, marginalized communities.
Right.
And they don't get along with each other.
No.
That by and large, the heterosexual African-American community, the civil rights community, wanted to distance themselves from any of their queer members. And the queer community, mostly led by white gay men, could be equally bigoted towards Black people as
Yeah.
straight white people. So you did find yourself almost without a homeland, and you had to find your allies, wherever you could, and that also was sort of interesting to see what kind of person would be Xavier's friend. Someone like Diane Carroll sort of
Sure.
fits perfectly because what she likes is that they're both talented and they can make each other better as actors. And the fact that he's not into her sexually is almost a relief,
It
that
has
he's
to be liberating, right?
oh
Because she could be herself, and she was a true supporter, an ally for us.
yes.
That's for sure. And I love the fact that you put that in this because you gave a face to a real human who was really our ally when life wasn't easy. And I liked that because it's a bit of an homage to the woman she really was in real life.
Well, I mean, in my first book, My Government Means to Kill Me, one of the significant supporting characters is a lesbian. I mean, I want to talk about that relationship between gay men and women, whether it's lesbian or heterosexual women. I mean, there's a lot of connection there that I feel like too often gets excised from the story. And I personally, I just like, I don't know where I'd be without my female friends,
Yes.
be they lesbian or straight or bi. I just like, this is like, come on. Like I think that's a really important part of the story that I enjoy highlighting.
I loved it too. And there's somebody else you talk about, a famous person was Hazel Scott.
Yeah.
And I know quite a bit about Hazel. I interviewed an author who wrote a fabulous book about her. And she too had two strikes against her.
Yeah.
I mean, not
she's a
only
woman and she's black and she was outspoken. I mean, I wanted to sort of bring her into the story as an homage to what she suffered for speaking up openly and talking, speaking out politically during McCarthyism and sort of, speaking out against the witch hunt of McCarthyism. And, her television show was canceled. She had to go make a career in Europe. I mean, it really fell apart for her because she dared to say what so few had the nerve to say.
Right, which sort of brings me to a bit of her life. So then she marries Adam Clayton Powell.
Yeah.
And she was further abused in their relationship, not physically that I'm aware of, but the fact that he was so exalted and she was the wife.
Yes.
But here was probably the most talented female pianist on earth, and she's having to play second fiddle. And so I noticed in your book, There's Only One Sin in Hollywood, there's a bit of about abused people and abusers.
Yeah, I mean, and the way you may not know what you deserve when you fall in love with somebody.
Yes.
That for my lead character, Aaron Toussaint, he is so desperate for love and affection that he'll almost take it wherever he can get it. And he's getting it from someone who's withholding and demanding and at times cruel. But as far as he doesn't know, there's a wider world out there.
No.
He thinks this is my one chance and I'd better do all I can to please this person and then everything will be all right. And that is a heartbreaking dynamic, but not an uncommon dynamic, especially when you don't. I mean, I think I sometimes want to remind heterosexuals that all those like puppy love childhood games where you write notes to everybody and all those grade school crushes, that's practice. That's practice on, hey, I want to, on setting boundaries and standards. And when you're queer, and most people growing up queer, we don't get that practice. So suddenly you find yourself in a situation where, you're not sure, is this normal? Should I accept this treatment? Does everybody accept this treatment? And you can make some really harmful decisions. And it takes you a while to break those patterns, especially once they're set.
That's right. And, factor on to being a people pleaser, that only exacerbates the issue. So talk a little bit about Horace and who Horace is.
Sure. So Aaron Toussaint leaves his small town and his abusive family, and he joins the Navy. And that's, I know it's sort of cheeky, but I just want to remind everybody that like that was a very quick way to get out of your situation. In a lot of
Yes.
ways, the only way. That you join the Army, they're going to feed you, house you, and take you away. And that is a lot of queer people did that. A lot of queer people almost didn't learn that there were other queer people until they joined the military.
Right.
San Francisco remains a queer mecca in this world because it had a port.
And a Navy. Yep.
A lot of those Navy guys, a lot of those sailors got off the boat, found each other, and said, "Why don't we just stay here?"
Right.
So it has a real thing there. And when he joins the Navy, one of the ace pilots with the Navy is Horace Dixon, and Horace has become the embodiment of masculinity. He's an ace fighter pilot, and he's rough and he's mean and he's demanding, and he's a man's man, and he's gay, and he can barely deal with it. And he finds in Aaron someone who he can express that side of himself with, but will also not demand more of him than he can give. So Horace comes into Aaron's life as sort of this savior figure. I mean, one of the keys to writing Aaron was, I thought, Aaron doesn't believe he can be a great man, but he believes he can be essential to a great man. He can serve a great man. He does that first with Horace, who's a war hero, and then he does it later with Xavier, who's a movie star. And when you are serving a great man, you make a lot of excuses for their shortcomings, because you have to explain why you're here, cleaning up the mess and doing all the little things that make them possible. And in ways, I mean, we throw around the term, not throw around, we use the term now, understand the term toxic relationships. As bad as they are, these two fit in the time for what they both can handle and what they're both demanding. They fit. And one of my challenges as a writer was not to judge it with our current lens, that this makes complete sense to them, even if it's just red flags are everywhere from us watching in 2026.
Yes, and I think you did it with such delicacy and grace that, and as I said, Aaron's been abused as a child, or you mentioned that, and he goes into one abusive relationship after another. Abusive in one form or another. His parental abuse was physical. But then with Horace is so demanding. He wants perfection. And Aaron, of course, as you said, knows that if you're serving a great man, you've got to make great strides and you've got to do the best job you can. And he does that. Yeah. And then, of course, with Xavier, sort of the same thing, just in a different business. It's not the Navy anymore. It's Hollywood.
Well, and also, I mean, what was good for me about, writing about the military and Hollywood is I couldn't think of two industries that have done more to sort of establish what masculinity means in this country. And they have such rigid and vivid definitions that almost no one actually can live up to. I mean, they're almost ludicrous in how strenuous they are, but yet millions follow them to this day, that this is what a man is. And I also this is what was sort of subversive about Rock Hudson. He fit the bill and he was gay. So how do you deal with that? How does the audience understand that both in this story, the war hero and the movie star, the man's man on both realms, these are two homosexual men. So what does it mean of this definition that you think is the paragon of like masculine heterosexuality, that we can play it so well?
Yes. Yeah. And I think we as a gullible public buy into it, because it's like, I never have one time tried to pass as gay, as straight. I don't have to pass as gay. I am gay, but I never tried to pass as straight. I just assumed everybody I meet knows that I'm gay instantly. I never have hid it, because I can't. It's obvious. I mean, I think anyone who meets me, I don't think anyone since I was 20 has ever assumed I was straight. And that's okay with me. I'm happy with that.
I'm actually having, so my husband and I have kids, and you drop them off and all this, and we live in like the Los Angeles area, and it sometimes startles me when other fathers will be like, so your wife, da da da, like people don't know me. Like the assumption that I'm heterosexual almost makes me gasp. I'm like, do you see these nails? Like, what are you talking about? What's, how dare you?
Right? But I think
Have I lost something?
right. I think with both the military and Hollywood, though, there's still, even to this day, there's that perception of masculinity
Yeah.
and what it's like to not be straight. And I think that, so there are a couple of people that you mentioned in the acknowledgments, who were sort of influenced
Mhm.
you or these books. Sherman Hemsley was one of those people. I don't think I'm outing him. I think by now
No,
everybody probably knows.
yeah.
If they don't, they can look it up online because it's out in the world. But I didn't realize he was gay until around the time he died. Seriously, I did not know, and I knew other actors were gay, but I didn't know about Sherman, and that's sort of odd to me.
Oh, I don't think I knew until he died either. I mean, I think it would. I mean, what was amazing is, I mean, he was on TV for nearly 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
both with the Jeffersons, and then I mean, he was on. I mean, he started with being on All in the
All of
Family,
the family, yeah.
and then I mean, a year after the Jeffersons go off the air, he's on Amen, which runs for like another 5 or 6 years,
Sure.
and Amen, he's playing a pastor. And there's no way, if that had been widely known in the Black or Hollywood community, there's no way they would have let this gay man play this pastor.
No.
And so I think he was very discreet about it, but it does speak to, here was someone who was a major TV star. I mean, back in the days when those shows got 30, 40 million viewers, he's coming into your living room every night. He's dazzling you, he's entertaining you, and he's this gay man, and you don't know it.
No.
And I'm fascinated. I really want the audience to sort of reckon with that. Like, what do you think of these celebrities? I mean, that goes down till today. I mean, it's sort of funny because we get all this content that makes us believe we really know these people. I mean, we even have things like, Architectural Digest would be like, hello, AD, come into my home.
Right.
I mean, they're literally walking us through their houses, and you think you know them.
Right. Well, and for me, I grew up in the 60s. Two iconic shows were Bewitched and The Brady Bunch. And both dads, not the original Darren, but the replacement Darren, he was gay, and so was Robert Reed. And but these are secret
fathers.
Yes, right. And I mean, they're looked on as, the leaders of their household and stuff. And I think, life would have been very different for a lot of us queer kids had we known in real life that they were great actors. They could play straight. I just wonder what life would be like if we were that. I mean, I was thinking of 50 Shades of Grey when they were thinking of turning that into a movie. Matt Bomer's name was mentioned until this group of crazy women started writing all these letters that he's queer. He can't be the guy in 50 Shades of Grey. I'm like, but he's a great actor.
Yeah. You wouldn't have known he was gay unless he told you he was gay.
Precisely.
Like you've been watching him in other things and you bought it the whole time.
100%. 100%.
Well, the one thing that you talk about the 60s and no one coming out, like I just really want to hit on the fact that it was just assumed to be like a law of gravity that if you came out, that's the end of your career. Right. So you get people like Paul Lynde and Charles Nelson Riley, who are they come up to the line, but also they're comedic, they're clownish. Yes. So that's allowed. They weren't trying to be leading men. They weren't trying to woo the women, And so I like that sort of digging into the politics where someone says, well, this is just simply impossible. And of course, we know it isn't. But I'd like to point that even now, we're always being told, well, this is simply impossible. And I'm like, never believe that. Like we know that whatever looks impossible now could very well be routine in 20, 30 years.
100%. So you do, you admit in the acknowledgments that you do a lot of research, and you do. I knew a lot of the places you mentioned from having, I do a lot of research. I get down a rabbit hole. I start looking at something. I'm like, oh Lord, 3 days later, I'm still digging in the rabbit hole, playing in the sands,
Yeah.
But I like the fact that you brought in a real life event, the raid of the Black Cat. And I thought that was very well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
I mean, that event is important to me because it's a couple of years before Stonewall, and it didn't catch on in the popular imagination. I think widely there are a couple of reasons that people sort of settled on. One is it involved brown and Black people. So that sort of marginalized it further.
Sure.
But also because of just geography, that LA is so spread out that word of it didn't, it just took longer for anybody to have a reaction. Whereas, if something takes place in Manhattan, it can sort of travel pretty quickly. It's so more densely populated. And so more people can get down there and get involved. Right. Also, people forget how long Stonewall lasted, that it was a siege. And so you had hours and hours and hours and hours to get down there. Whereas this raid, it really happens in like 15, 20 minutes of just unrest, violence. And then, they're handcuffing people and taking them away. And it's sort of like done for the night. But I wanted to take this event before we had what we now understand to be Pride and talk about how people in that environment would react to something like this.
And well done on that. And, just so we're clear, there were raids on bars in Miami in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s. But those were because of drugs. I'm like, please, you could buy drugs on any corner of any street in Miami.
Here.
You didn't have to go in a bar and hide. You could buy it on the street corner. Give me a break already.
Well, the pretext is always, a lot of bars, and oftentimes, this is what sort of made drag dangerous back in the day. They could raid your bar on the pretext that it was, of course, illegal for a man to be dressed as a woman. So, having a drag performer, you were really out there as an establishment, because it was almost like it was a violation that you knew they could use to shut down the whole place.
Yes. Yeah. We've come a long ways, but we still have a long way to go, unfortunately. Because I don't really know of. I guess Matt is a good TV actor, but I don't know that. And he's done movies, but I don't consider him a big movie star. And no offense to Matt. I just know him more from television, but I don't really know of any out gay actors who are movie stars that are leading men.
Coleman Domingo in the right role.
Yes, absolutely. I stand corrected.
But it's not, the other thing that's sort of happening is we used to get you could get 2 or 3 or 4 movies from a movie star in as many years.
Yes.
And they just don't make movies that often. So even with a Coleman Domingo, it's like, well, how much can he do? He's going to show up in a leading role once every 3 years or so. And, we need a bigger crop of queer stars in order to really have consistent representation.
I agree. So one other person that's not included in your book, but I was wondering, was there a Black person of similar status to Scotty Bowers in real life in your research?
So Scotty Bowers, just for those who don't know, ran this gas station, but also was basically arranging sexual escapades for queer stars. He went a long time. Did he start in the 40s?
In the 40s, yep. And he was 70s? All the way through the 70s and 80s.
He was the person, and I thought about Scotty and using him in some connection. Like I almost thought, like, well, would Xavier be one of Scotty's boys when he first got to town? My problem with Scotty is he is what I would call an unreliable narrator. I believe he did a lot of what he said, but especially as he got older, the claims got so wild. And it was really, I mean, I've watched documentaries, I've read his book, and I mean, I actually thought like he's too hot for me to handle. Like if I bring him into my story, it brings a level of truth meets fiction meets truth meets fiction that's almost meta. So I kept him out.
Well, and I understand that. So, in any of your research, did you find a similar person in the Black community?
I didn't find. I mean, it's really hard to talk about, like when you're like, you don't have the paper trail. Like I don't think it didn't exist.
Yeah, of course.
But I think the need for protection and secrecy made that very difficult to sort of substantiate. And by the time the world had changed and become more accepting, I imagine a lot of those. I mean, one of the reasons why Scotty's story is even known to us is he lived so long.
Yes.
If Scotty had died in the first wave of the AIDS epidemic, I'm not sure we'd know who Scotty was.
I don't think so either.
And so I think, unfortunately, when you're looking at queer history among Black people, there is this dearth of what we'll call primary source evidence. But I refuse to be like, oh well, we don't have the papers, so they must not exist. I don't believe that's true.
No,
I think the way oppression works is it erase them from the record.
I agree. And, so I have sort of toyed with asking this. So Alan Toussaint's character sort of is almost a sellout in some ways.
Yes.
And that was a decision you made that I was a little surprised by, but I wasn't unhappy with that decision. So do you want to share with the audience what I mean by that?
Yeah, I wanted to take you into the life of someone who hopefully by the time he becomes grown, you are sympathetic. You understand why he is the way he is and he sees the world the way he does. And yet he is an enforcer for the oppression that we want to throw off. He is an employee of the studio. He is there to keep these closeted people in the closet. And I think sometimes or oftentimes when we write about what we'll call sellouts or people who are accomplices to our oppression, we paint them as endlessly self-hating and contemptuous of those of us who are more open. And I wanted to talk about somebody who was doing that, but in the moment believed they were protecting the people they were oppressing. I mean, Aaron is in love with Xavier, and he believes he's doing everything he can to see Xavier rise to the top. And he's like, I didn't make the world. This is just the way it operates, and I can help you navigate it. And that's just a little more complex, and challenges. Well, how do you feel about Aaron at the end of it? In some ways, by the end of it, Aaron was right. Xavier could have maybe gone further, certainly might still be alive if he had just continued to toe the line. But of course, Xavier is where I want us to go. So that was one of the tensions of the book, was to take somebody. I mean, I believe that anytime, any group, like I said, I'm Black, I'm gay, anytime there's an effort to hold us down, you will find people from our community guarding the door, right? Like they are always, somebody from inside the community is used to make sure the rest of us, stay in line. And that's just a fascinating figure to me. And I'm telling everyone, so it's not really a trick. I want you to go into the book sort of coming to terms with, oh, wait, we've I like this person or I understand this person, and now he's standing here politically. How do I feel about that?
Well done, Rasheed. Well done. The book is called There's Only One Sin in Hollywood. Rasheed, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Dan. This was fun.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.